Step outside.
Yate, anotro, dikle, everybody tonight. Thank you very much for being here. This is Indigenous Ways' is almost 200th show, Wisdom Circle. So we're very grateful. We'd like to take this time to honor our ancestors, and we'd like to take this time to acknowledge the land owners and keepers and caretakers of these lands we reside on here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Ocopowingue, the pueblos of these lands. So thank you all for letting us be here to live and work and enjoy all the resources of the beautiful vast richness of the Southwest brown and red dirt of New Mexico. So we would like to take this time to give a great honoring welcome for Dr. Melanie McKay-Cody, who is Cherokee. Melanie has studied critically endangered Indigenous sign languages in North America and helps different tribes to preserve their tribal signs. She also specializes in Indigenous deaf studies and interpreter training incorporating Native culture, North American Indian Sign Language, and American Sign Language. So we have a wonderful treat this evening, and we would like to welcome Dr. Melanie. I love saying that, Dr. Melanie. That is so cool. Thank you for being with us, sister.
Okay, hello. Hello, everyone. So before I start, I do want to recognize and do a land acknowledgement. I am living and working on Pascua Yaqui, which is signed Yaqui, and Tohono O'odham land here. I work and live here on their land. I want to honor their homelands and show my gratitude for being able to stand here and work. Many thanks. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking. And during my presentation, I'm going to cover three main topics. I'm going to talk about our past, how Native American Sign Language has been passed down, do a brief look at where it came from, talk about present day study, and also talk about how we can pass what's going on now and languages on to our future generations. Those are the things I plan to talk about. I graduated from the Oklahoma School for the Deaf. And at that time, when I was in school there, I would say more than half of the students who were enrolled were Native. Some of them were what you would call full-blooded, dark-skinned, to people like myself. So I grew up with many Native people in my school. And then I've been to several different colleges in my academic career. I did study at Gallaudet University. I focused on Native studies, but Gallaudet does not have any dedicated coursework to Native studies or Indian concerns. So I worked on my major. I have a master's degree from the University of Arizona in Indian Sign Language. And then I moved to the University of Kansas, KU. I graduated with an additional master's degree in linguistic anthropology and did my doctorate work at the University of Oklahoma. So I kind of made a whole circle, went full circle from the place where I was born back to the place where I earned my doctorate. So my degrees are in social, cultural anthropology. I've done Indigenous deaf studies and all those various topics together. But my main interest is Native American Sign Language, and especially Northern American Indian Sign Language. That is a linguistic term we use. Hand talk is the community term. I may use those kind of interchangeably. I've been embedded in the community doing research for a very long time. Let's see the next slide, please. So that is a list of the work I've been involved with for the past 30 years. I've done a lot of interpreter training. I've worked in the education profession, again, within cultural anthropology. I've worked with sign language and how studies of sign language overlap with educational experiences, just so many layers to my career. Next, I'm going to show a picture. It is from the past. This is from Kiowa. The sign is Kiowa. I would like for everyone in the audience to look over this picture. Give yourself a few moments and think about how many signs you think you can recognize or pull out from this picture. And remember, this picture is from some time ago. Signed languages began around 6000 BC, so long ago. Sign language obviously was around before American Sign Language arrived. And langue signe française, what we know in America as French Sign Language, was not the first signing to happen on US soil. Indigenous signs were already here. That there were French fur traders who came over, picked up our indigenous signs, brought them back to France. And there is a lot of intermingling of people and marriages that happened at schools for the deaf. And they talk about, like, Laurent Clerc, the first deaf educator of the deaf in America, who was brought over to America from France and bringing American Sign Language. But our American Sign Language that we know today is creolized. It is about 20% from Indigenous Sign influences. So that's something that I wanted to make sure to mention. Now look over this picture and think about how many signs you think are being depicted. Is everybody ready? Type what you think you see in the chat. How many signs do you think you see? Type them into the chat. Here we go. Take a look. Thank you. How many? Let's see. I wonder what you think. That's okay. Someone says 15. Someone said I can't find any. All right. Anybody want to put any more answers and guesses? I am curious. We'll wait a moment.
This is Tasha's voice. We got a request to show it again.
Go ahead and show it. So to answer is, many of the things depicted here are based in indigenous signs, an Indian sign. This is a painted picture. Oh, okay. So you may have seen in the corner, there were two people standing there. One was a Kiowa. One is of Mexican origin. Mexican person was holding a pole. That means they're the boss or they're in charge of the scene or the situation. We also saw the person who looked like their arm was in this shape, and another one had their head removed from their body, and their body was pinched into an hourglass type shape. To say it in so many words, it means he was cut in half, like with a knife. But this is a sign we use It's not actually depicting somebody being cut in half. We also saw somebody with legs in the air. That means it's dead. This would be the sign. We saw the snake-looking feature or character that refers to water or a creek or stream running through there. We also saw the rattle that was in the picture. That's their sign for often. That sign translates to often. In ASL, we sign it like this. But a sign similar in appearance to a snake's rattle is showing that it's often. The other one with a person cut in half, there's just so many. There's just so many, almost all of them. And somebody said 15, maybe there were even more. It's a panel that's in two parts. The picture I showed you is half. It's quite large, and there are a lot of things shown on it. Kiowa is a Plains Indian. Their pictures or stories begin on the right and move toward the left. That's picture writing, and it is telling a story of something that happened. People were becoming hungry. They felt people from Mexico were stealing their food. There was some war or conflict there. The being cut in half references being hungry. There is another part on another panel showing hiding in a cave, being hungry, and things are portrayed. There was a specific symbol that talked about the Kiowa. And that was their means of preserving their history or putting down their history. In the Great Basin area in North America, in the United States, they tend to go from left to right. But in the plains, they go from right to left. So as soon as I look at that picture, you can see that that aspect is a part of their language. There may be something, pre-boarding school, pre-mission school, pre-writing, and so people would overlook those and just think they were art for art's sake, but they were richly full of language. And there are so many rock panels all over the United States, Canada, some in Mexico, Central America, etc., with these types of things that people just miss. Spoken language has always been our priority, has always been treated as supreme. And, boarding schools really focused on speaking English, and they did perform linguistic genocide and destroyed and caused many languages to, become less used or extinct. And now that we recognize that, we're doing our best to try to revitalize them. We want to include these in, language revitalization and regrowth efforts, because that's our future. Let's look at the next picture, please. So the picture next to the gentleman is the sign that was drawn in that panel, depicting the sign for Kiowa. There's a cohesion there. Thank you. So that information is old, maybe even ancient, but transferred to modern day. And we can use this in our language and linguistic documentation work. We can look at the past to bridge to the present. We talk about intergenerational transmission of languages. This is a model of that. Okay, so that's something from our past, our Indigenous past. Next, we're going to go ahead and move forward and jump into the present or current day. I'd like to show you a map of signed languages in the regions across the United States. The next picture, please.
Okay, the image I just showed is a map, and you can see colored in are different locations on the map. That shows the regions where that specific type of sign language was used. You can see Plains Indian Sign Language fills the middle area, basically from the Gulf of Mexico up to Canada. There were various deaf communities plus others who typically say Plains Indian Sign Language was used throughout the continent, which is not the case. There were different types of sign languages. ASL has influences from NISL, the Northeast Indian Sign Language, not from the Plains or Western forms of sign language that you see on the map there. So there were different regions with different use. Northeastern Indian Sign Language, you can see there was Plains Indian Sign Language, Southwest Indian Sign Language, and you can see on the map the scattering all the way over to the west where there's West Coast Indian Sign Language being used. So there were different types of sign language used in different regions of the continent based on the nouns that were used in that region. For example, names of food, names of clothing articles, names of animals. That is what basically led the development of those Indian Sign Language. And that is based off my research and interactions I've had with the various tribes in those regions. Through research, I have found anecdotally sharing of historical stories and also conferring with other professors. And that's how I have come up with NAISL, Northeastern American Sign Language, and these various classifications. So this is a classification system that's risen from my research. The slide I showed shows what's considered North American Indian Sign Language, and then it has a family tree that shows the distribution. So you saw it was the first icon in blue, and then there was a second icon in red that shows the different regions and classifications. And then on the green side, those regions are connected to the tribes that use those signs. Again, the regions align with the images on the map, and then the section in green has specific tribe names that use those types of sign language. And so it's basically a sign dialect, if you'd like to consider that. That's the same idea. For example, I'd studied two tribes and then that were nearby, and then one would say, oh no, that's not our sign, that's from a different tribe. And then I'd go to the other tribe, and that tribe would say, no, we don't use this sign. This is from that other tribe next door. And that is what led to the development and refining of which tribes use which signs. Now, again, for the list of different signs that I just showed you, that is linguistic documentation. Now, for the community who uses hand talk or who uses sign talk, those words can go together. In general, that's what the community labels it as. Now, the names that I've come up with on the slide I just showed you is for linguistic purposes. So there is a difference between the two. And I want to make sure I disaggregate that for you tonight. The slide I just showed you is at vox.com. It's a video that was released, and it has a huge number of views. I am also in there providing specific and general information, and it serves as a good educational tool that can be used in the classroom. I would refer to it. And it gives you an indication of our future plans that we can start handing down to future generations. Next, I will show you two deaf signers that are fluent in their use of Plains Indian Sign Language. And they use Plains Indian Sign Language and grew up within the signing community, which is where they learn the signs via family, where they're mixed between hearing, deaf, and hard of hearing individuals within their families. So you'll see two slides that show that. Next one, please. Those two individuals are fluent users of Plains Indian Sign Language and are deaf. The preservation of Indian Sign Language is extremely sacred. And both of these individuals are from intergenerational heritage sign language users that have carried on the language throughout time. There are other languages that are new and that have arisen. So there are different groupings. Those for the new types of Indian Sign Language that have taken signs used by other tribes and incorporated them into their own use. But the two that I reference use a natural flow of Plains Indian Sign Language, and so they are also included in my research. That is the first film to mix American Sign Language and North American Indian Sign Language into a film. It's one of many more that will be produced. There is now another movie. Hollywood has started now to also use authentic Indian Sign Language compared to times in the past where the signs were vague, where the signs weren't too certain as to meaning. If you remember John Wayne, he has a yellow ribbon where the Indian sign didn't look normal. They were using just a few signs. And then Dr. Quinn in the video, they have spotty use of sign, but not a complete structure or structural use of sign. So before those times, there was not really too much video footage. At this point, people are seeking authentic signs so that they can use accurate signs with proper structure. More and more people are beginning to acknowledge sign language as a language, not just as a grouping of broken signs. People are actually giving sign language the attention it deserves and are seeking out signers that use those languages that they're seeking to use so that they can depict them appropriately. So we are making some movement there and some improvements. Both of the individuals I showed on the slide are deaf and are native signers, and I have worked with them both, and they both do an awesome job with their tribes. One in Washington State, excuse the interpreter, the video was in Washington State, which used a Native American filmmaker and a coda, along with a team observing various perspectives, one observing the indigenous perspective and another observing from a different perspective, which doesn't happen quite often, but I really commend that group and give them credit. If you have a chance to watch that film that I just referenced on the slide, please do so. Our next topic to discuss now is the future. The future involves deeper research, more than what's already been done. I am working with the University of Arizona. We have received a grant to focus on Indian Sign Language use. We are creating a directory, and I will show that on the next slide. Interpreter said directory. I'm sure Melanie meant dictionary. This is Melanie speaking. On that video dictionary, we have marvelous signers. We have those people who are fluent. They're the last people who are fluent in the use of Indian Sign Language. Working with them has been amazing. It's an amazing group of signers. We have put together a compilation, a dictionary of different signs from various tribes. We hope that this work will continue because there is a need to add to that archive. So if you are familiar with signs that are used within your tribe, please let us know, because we are seeking to incorporate and add as many tribal signs as possible to that video dictionary. On the last slide, I would like to acknowledge the funding source. Thank you so much. I think that about closes my session. We do have time remaining for Q&A. So for those of you that would like to ask anything, feel free to do so.
Thank you so much, Melanie. This was beyond fascinating, beyond educational, and beyond informative. So if it's okay, I'd like to ask you one question, and then I'll give it up to the audience. So
Sure.
with interpreting studies and with the needs of the Native American deaf population still living on native lands, also known as reservations. I prefer to call them nations, sovereign nations, if you will. Why is it that the Americans with Disabilities Act does not apply to reservation schools and medical settings, legal settings, when the tribes are actually getting federal funding, but still the tribes are not allowing ADA to become a law on our lands? Can you talk about that a little bit? Thank you.
Yes, I can talk about that. So yes, from my experience visiting different nations and also through other deaf Native individuals, most tribes do not provide interpreting services, for example, at all, for several reasons. They're really tight with money. They feel like deaf people don't need access or don't need to be included. They feel like they don't want the white people's way controlling what they do on their land. So that's just a few of many reasons. And I have lived temporarily on some nations' property in Montana, and I have seen firsthand the lack of services, or the services that are allowed are just not good. I had a field interpreter with me one time for research, and one of the deaf people we met said, can you please, can we use your interpreter for something that I need to have interpreted? And of course, my interpreter was ready and willing to do that. And I said, of course, that's fine. They needed to go to a doctor's appointment to get glasses. Their doctor wouldn't have provided an interpreter for them. That's one of the factors that has driven me to really want to establish an interpreter training program at the University of Arizona for people specializing in Indigenous settings. We have a lot of interpreters, but so few of them are of Indigenous cultural backgrounds. And that's really something that has led me to want to look for grants. There's a great need. We could pull people from all over who have the background, who are interested, people who use American Sign Language. Many deaf Native people use American Sign Language these days, of course. So we would have American Sign Language training in our core courses, but I would then like to put on top of that training for Indigenous settings. And we could have people who are already Indigenous interpreters working to help us develop course curricula, to mentor the young interpreters. It's so badly needed. We need interpreters in Indigenous settings so badly. People who live on reservations would prefer to have somebody steeped in Indigenous knowledge, for example, a medicine ceremony. That's just not something that most standard or white interpreters have backgrounds in, or non-Native interpreters have backgrounds in. So that's just a piece of what I'd like to do.
That's awesome. Okay, I have one more question. I know this is a loaded one, so if you can keep it a little bit short and truncated as best as possible, can you tell us a little bit about the difference between mainstream education, putting deaf children into hearing schools, if you will, versus kids going into deaf schools? Can you talk about the difference in that education and access for the kids and what they gain from it and what they don't gain from it? Thank you.
Yes. I've worked with several parents, Native parents specifically, who have asked how they could transfer. So some Native schools, of course, on reservations or nations would prefer to keep the money that comes to them to serve the children who are there. But parents are begging for assistance. So I've helped with IEPs, individualized education programs, to have those children transferred to schools for the deaf. I need to be clear in saying every school has its pros and cons. So communication is excellent in schools for the deaf, but the cultural influence is not always enough. We really need more deaf Native teachers. We need more Indian deaf education. Most schools for the deaf don't even give that a thought or have anything like that available. So if they went to a school in a nation, they have that culture, but access isn't good. If there even is an interpreter, they may be, kind of drowning in trying to provide access. So then that child in that case is not getting full access to that language and culture that's there. One positive in that mainstream, again, is that Native culture. At schools for the deaf, you're not going to find that readily available. Access to American Sign Language is awesome there, so communication is good, but there are pros and cons with every school setting.
Thank you very much for that. That is an all-day discussion right there in itself. So thank you for giving us a little bit of insight. As always, deaf Native perspective is the best. I mean, that's where we need to go to. If we ever have any questions, we need to go to the deaf natives, right? We don't need to have other people telling us about your experiences. So thank you for that, Melanie. Really appreciate that. I'd like to take this time to do a really quick commercial break, and Elena's going to make a few announcements, and then we're going to invite the audience in. Thank you, Elena.
Oh, Melanie, thank you so much for your extraordinary walk and blessings with this incredible information that you've been able to bestow upon us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Look, we've got a lot of people in Zoom, and I also know online, so I'm just going to make our commercial break very quick. This is what is coming up. Our final wisdom circle for the year is with the beautiful Ed Cody. Ed is a fabulous musician. He's going to be with us on December the 21st, which is the third Wednesday of each month. We have the Wisdom Circle. He's going to be sharing all the incredible journeys that he has done. Dr. Melanie McKay-Cody's information was so jam-packed and very, very informative. We're going to be having the recording of her live with 200 other presenters that we have on our website, IndigenousWays.org. Just go into our virtual library. You'll be able to see all those amazing wisdoms. She'll be there in the next week. If you'd like to share that with your friends, we would love that. You can also, if you're watching the recording of this in any of our social media, thank you for blessing us in that format. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter so you know what's coming down the pike, also go to IndigenousWays.org, our website, and there you can sign up with the phenomenal virtual events that we're doing and the presenters, or our in-person events that we co-create with the community. So below us, you'll see all our social media pages beaming across. If you're with us on social media, please like our page, share it with your friends. We would absolutely love that because we need all the support we can get. And All of this is possible. All our events are free. All our events have ASL interpreters, meaning that it's access available to everyone. All of this is possible thanks to our sponsors, the National Endowments of the Arts, the City of Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department, the New Mexico Humanities Council, and of course the National Endowment of Humanities. And we want to thank our board and also individual donors who have wanted to support us on this journey. I just want to let you know, every year after Thanksgiving, the following Tuesday, it's called Giving Tuesday. So all nonprofits around the world go for Giving Tuesday, which happens to be the 29th of November, 2022. We are a nonprofit organization by the name of IndigenousWays. So we're going to be part of the Giving Tuesday, and we would love for you to support us. If you're feeling a bit like me and don't have any money, well, this is where you get to have your friends. Hey, we know this great organization, Indigenous Ways. If you've got any $2, a dollar, give to them, $5, $100. This enables us to have the interpreters, bring in the presenters, and all the amazing things that we've been doing. We've been able to do this because of you. And one of the things that Melanie talked about, and I'm saying I am very, very proud of this, and that is the fact that that we have incredible people that, including our interpreters, who are mainly Indigenous. We're very proud of that and doing that. And I want to thank Dr. Carla Garcia Fernandez, who I think around August 2020 said, hey, you're doing Indigenous, Native American, LGBTQIA, your ASL interpreters that you have need to reflect that. So as a very small organization, that's one of the things I'm very proud of. And I also want to thank Tash for having that as well. Also, at the end of December, it's end of year donation, so we have that as well. Lastly, we've got our donation. If you want to keep us going with the amazing presenters, including Dr. Melanie McKay-Cody, having incredible people like herself, well, please donate to our organization so we can make that happen. We've got PayPal, we've got Venmo, and I think I have done enough. We've got all these incredible people coming in through. So we're going to bring everyone in and thank everyone for being here. And Tash, I'll let you take it away. We've got about 15 minutes. We've got a lot of people who might have incredible questions, and Tash is going to guide this. But thanks everyone for being in. If you're in social media, start typing your questions and we'll share that as well. Thanks, Tash.
Thank you very much, Elena, for that. And I want to thank everyone for being here to Bridge Cultures, and all of you beaming in from social media. Thank you all for joining the show. How this is going to work is everybody go ahead and share your screen and keep your mute button on. And as soon as you want to share, as soon as you want to talk, we're going to do one person at a time. We have a raise your hand icon that you can go ahead and put up, and we can call on you, and we'll go ahead and even out all the, we'll do a gallery view, and the interpreters will take it from there. So we do have some signers here tonight, and we also have some hearing people, hearing people. So let's just do the best we can tonight. Who wants to go first?
And while people are deciding, I'm just going to talk. And we've got Nicole Oxendine, who is in the chat box. She said, thank you for a very interesting presentation. My daughter, Quincy, who has been studying ASL and I were able to watch together. And she's got to leave, but she really appreciated the presentation. So thank you for that.
Love you,
Melanie.
Nicole and daughter. Thank you. Keep going. Don't never stop, and let's talk soon. Love you. Bye. Okay, next. Otra. Carlón, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, gracias. Very good. I just want to say thank you to Melanie. It's not only important to have qualified interpreters, signers, but especially since I've returned to my homeland, which is New Mexico, I realize even more how important it is to have culturally appropriate individuals providing the sign language and interpreting for students. It's just a tremendous thing, and I would hope, and I realize because of the lack of education with regards to Native American Sign Language and its origins, our deaf students who come from Native American backgrounds almost always get thrown just kind of a melting pot of, I don't know if this is a correct English word, but homogenization. Everything just gets homogenized. And it's very important for certain cultures to maintain the cultural aspects. And so I'm so thrilled that Melanie and others who study linguistics have made sincere efforts to bridge these gaps. Hopefully it'll get better in the future, but I've seen in the past, because I've interpreted both in schools with large Native American populations and schools with not large Native American populations, or perhaps schools that don't have populations that understand Latin culture, so to speak. And it really takes a toll on the students. It takes a toll on humanity in general. So I really appreciate the effort moving in that direction. Hopefully, we can, bring in some of these individuals, educate interpreters, and have more Native American interpreters actually in the field. When I started out in the field umpteen years ago, it was a white, female-dominated profession, and pretty much stays that way to this very degree. But we need people of color. We need people from these different backgrounds to help our children maintain their cultural heritage. So thank you so much, Melody. Appreciated your presentation so much.
Thank you, Carlin. All right, I want to go to Carla and Rogelio. Thank you for being with us from Austin, Texas. Carla, what's up? Rogelio, what's
This is
up?
Carla speaking. Hi. We are in California, Los Angeles, California. Carla, did you see what Rogelio said?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let me start over. Melanie, wonderful presentation tonight. I really enjoyed your presentation. Critical work. Hats off to you completely. I'm curious, Melanie, how we can all work together, because there are a variety of communities. We've got the Mexican community, Cuban community, Puerto Rican community. We know that there are all the cultures with different languages within the United States as well. There is so much information sitting right under our nose.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
right there. I'm wondering what work we can do to come together, because we just can't afford to see our newest generation, our future generation, being deprived of all this critical information. So how can we work together to quote unquote accelerate things to get there quicker? Does it take money? I mean, I know location is one thing, but what type of resources do you need from us so that we can see a way to start supporting you and start collaborating and working together?
Okay, thank you for your question. I think I would love to include Latin communities in my program that is intended for Indigenous interpreter training, because, I might be trying to steal Cress, in fact, as faculty for my program. Just putting it out there.
Carla,
All
Melanie
right.
might steal Carla as faculty.
Oh,
Yeah.
still Carla, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Melanie. Carla, Rogelio, love you. Let's go to our beautiful sister Alita, who's had her hand up for a minute, and then on to James Woodenlegs. Alita, what's up?
Alita here signing hello. Amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Melanie. Thank you. I had a thought coming to mind when the question about the ADA was asked and why it's not applied on Indigenous lands or reservation in those schools. I thought that that was already a part of Indigenous culture, that that was already settled because hand talks exists and the culture used it. I thought it was already ingrained and a part of the culture. And so in this approach to revitalize culture, I think the value to sign language can be incorporated and can be revitalized because it was already a part of that historical culture. And you might not need the ADA. I think we just need to reignite the passion within the community again. And one way to think about it is perhaps growing the number of Indigenous interpreters that sign and reaching out to them and having interpreters that speak Dene, that speak
Yes.
the languages that the tribe use.
Yes.
And of course, there will be a few of those, but we need to focus on them and then teach them and then have them teach second or third generations because they already have those skills. They're already ready, they're present, they're in the tribe, they're in the community, and they have more fluency and more competency to work with those cultures and work with other nearby tribes. So that's just an idea that I'd like to share. Melanie, I am very excited by your work. I am looking forward to expanding the number of Indigenous interpreters, and I found your presentation very inspirational today.
Thank you. And I think that the University of Arizona has a native SOAR program, SOAR. I've been trying to work with the director of that program. Native SOAR, they liaise with high school students, K through 12 students, and we're going to think about recruiting younger people. Also looking at vocational rehab, talking with vocational rehab, exposing them to the concept, encouraging them to reach out to the schools around the schools for the deaf or students that have mainstream deaf students there. These people might want to become teachers. There are CODAs, children of deaf adults, all over these United States who have these rich experiences, who may like to consider pursuing interpreting or who are already interpreting. The University of Arizona provides tuition waivers.
Right.
For the 22 federally recognized tribes. But I don't know what that situation here is, what that situation is in other states, but that's what it is here. So we're looking for more Indigenous faculty as well. I'm really trying to draw more interpreters to the area. We're going to need faculty, of course. But I'm working with not only thinking about an interpreter training program, but also Indigenous education program, a teacher education program. Teaching and learning services is a department I've been working with. I've really been spending a lot of my time creating these partnerships and these collaborations. We also have, of course, Indian health, Indian law, lots of people that we can make these connections with and cooperate with. And that way interpreters could choose some of those courses during their interpreting curriculum. They'll have this cross-department education. Maybe they want to focus on education. Maybe they want to focus on working in the legal field. Maybe they want to focus on working in anthropology and linguistics. They could have these as their elective courses on top of their interpreter training program. So they can at least become familiar with issues in Indian health, with Native studies, maybe Native history studies. There are so many different possibilities that we are starting to develop. There's a task force being convened about how we will proceed with this development. So right now I'm in the process of making all these collaborations, and probably in about 2 years, I'll be recruiting people for the interpreter training I've been talking about for Indian studies in deaf education. So we can use some things from the Indian or Native Studies department. We can use some things from the educational department to become a new course for us for future teachers.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Before the night ends, we got to hear from James Woodenlegs. He is our Indigenous Sign Language superstar of Indigenous Ways. James Woodenlegs, talk to us. What's up, brother?
This is James speaking. Good evening, everyone in this space together. I am so happy that Tosh and Elena invited Melanie to present tonight. Growing up, I went to the school here, and they would slap my hands when I would use Indian Sign Language. I couldn't use it. I had to use American Sign Language. I was brokenhearted inside, and I lamented over it. I cried. I came home and I said this to my dad, right? And then I did like a slapping on my mouth. And he said, "Hey, don't sign that. You can't speak that language here." And I thought, oh, okay. He thought I was insulting him with this sign, and I learned not to use that sign anymore, depicting an Indian making sounds. And I see that sometimes in schools, they teach that sign when they teach about Indians, and it hurts so much. I'd like to point out to people here, don't do anything that seems like that sign. Instead, encourage the kids to sign. Let's revitalize Indian sign. And I also remember living on the res. And at one point having to talk to the BIA. So I had some letters sent to the BIA. And McCain was on the board of Indian Affairs at that time in Arizona. And I kept getting no responses, and I kept submitting application after application. So I moved to Albuquerque, and being in Albuquerque with the ADA and diverse people, my access needs were being met. I tried to take what's here home, but I wasn't able to because of the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. There is blockage there to this day. I have aunts, uncles, and family who don't live in houses and use their children to get houses. And I see them and the desperation, and I want to do something about it. This is Native American Awareness Month. Things are getting better. I'll emphasize getting better, not that they're the best, but they're getting better. And the only thing we can be is grateful for that. I appreciate all you taking the time to hear my words. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Love you,
I
brother.
appreciate
Love
you.
you.
Thank you,
Love you,
James
brother.
Woodenlegs.
We're out
I
of
love you
town. I'm
too.
going to hand it to
Hugs.
Elena.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And, I just want to reiterate something that James was saying. It is Native American Heritage Month. And reiterating something that our wonderful guest and her presentation, it takes individuals to really stand up and speak. And we come from oppressed communities where someone gets jealous. I don't want to do that. But it takes the courageous to keep going. We've got a social media comment from Little Cloud who says, "I enjoyed this presentation very much, and I'm interested in learning more about Indian Sign Language." Little Cloud, James Woodenlegs, who just spoke, is one of the presenters on the Indigenous Ways Wisdom Circle, and he specifically addresses Indian Sign Language. So you can go there or speak to him now. We've also got Dr. Carla Garcia Fernandez that is here with her beautiful husband, Rogelio Fernandez. Both of them have also got presentations here. Carla specifically addresses education in deaf world. It is just beyond phenomenal. Just like her husband's presentation, Rogelio, looking at Mexican art, deafness, and how that coincides. We've got Terry Vinson, who is also in the circle tonight, and she talks about deaf through Native perspective and education. Listen, we have got extraordinary people in these windows, outside of these windows, doing extraordinary things. But the only way that we can do this is do it together. James Woodenlegs was one of the photos that Dr. Melanie showed in here, being a full language, Indian language with Northern Cheyenne in his language. And, the only way that it's not going to die is by people standing up taking that bold leap of courage to do. And that's what Melanie Cody has presented to us in these squares. I mean, I feel really inspired by the words that she shared, like most of you. I'm sorry we don't have more time because there were so many things, but this is what I do want to say. Every third Wednesday of the month, we're here at the Wisdom Circle. We would love for you to join us. Go into our archives, find out what these incredible people have been speaking about. I want to thank our interpreters, Amy, and also Crescentiano, making access available for all. I'd also like to thank all those live and also in our social media. And if you're watching this, but the most important person we got to thank this evening, who has really made this possible, and with the incredible wisdoms that she's been able to share with us, please let's everyone give it up for the one and only Dr. Melanie McKay-Cody.
Touch the earth